Our coverage of Worldcon 74 continues now. The Hugo Awards, of course, a big part of Worldcon every year. The last couple of years have been not kind to the Hugos in terms of public perception and infighting and the back and forth and as ugly as it's gotten with the nominations and debates, I guess we could call. This year, however, it seems to have calmed down slightly, just a bit, in terms of everybody observing that the Hugo controversy is not as controversial this year. Kate Paulk joins us now. She is one of the organizers of Sad Puppies 4, the embiggening, I guess is what you've been calling it. So, people who are watching this, fandom in general, there's at least a passing familiarity with what's been going on with the Hugos the last couple of years. There's been, the whole no award thing last year. Basically, the Hugos getting almost burned to the ground because of politics and personalities and all sorts of things that have happened.
Yes.
And talking with Ruth Lippard, who's the chair here at Americon too, she said that it seems as if once all of that happened, everybody kind of took a step back and said, "Ooh, that got nasty. We don't need to do that again." And from what I've seen so far, Sad Puppies 4 doesn't seem to be getting quite as much of a blowback or a negative reaction as the past campaigns. Has that been your experience? Was that a goal going into it?
It was more that everybody who has been involved in the Sad Puppies campaigns has tried to make them as open as we can, but all of us have full-time jobs, or we write full-time in Larry Correa's case.
Right.
We are not by nature politicians. We are simply fans and writers who are very concerned at seeing the, frankly, dismal participation figures, and seeing that librarians don't consider the Hugo Awards to be even relevant when it comes to deciding what books they are going to stock in their libraries, because people in general, the wider world, don't really care. They don't see the Hugo Award winner as meaning, oh, this will be a good read. They seem to be seeing it lately as, oh, this is going to be boring. And, awards that people like Asimov and Heinlein and some of the many, many other greats of science fiction have won over the years should not dwindle to a kind of irrelevant pat each other on the back thing.
Right.
And so, we've tried in our own ways to make things more open. The method I chose was one after observing both the flack that people caught, that Brad and Larry caught, and the sheer nastiness directed at them and at others, in some cases simply because they happen to be mentioned favourably.
Right.
After seeing that, I thought, okay, I will do this, but I will do it in a way that makes it impossible for someone to claim I'm being biased, I am slating, I am trying to harm things. Because really what will end any of those accusations is having, instead of it being a celebration that, oh my gosh, we've had over 5,000 nomination votes.
Right.
Given that we are talking the premier award for science fiction, and how popular science fiction movies and games and anime and manga and all of those other things have become, given the mega bestsellers like the Harry Potter series, like the Twilight books, which were in their publication years eligible. Worldcon attendances should be 5 figures and higher.
Oh, sure. There should
They have been around. They have been doing well to get 5,000 paid attendance.
Right.
Worldcon voting numbers should be very much in the 5 figures, in the tens of thousands, and they are not. When you have fewer than 10,000 voters, when you can guarantee a finalist slot with fewer than 50 people who will follow your voting lead, that's not good for the award, it's not good for the genre. So the embiggening was to try and boost that. I was delighted to find that the number of nomination ballots cast came close to doubling over last year. So the whole point has been to try and push for more participation. I don't really care who ends up winning.
Right.
Because if there's more participation, there's more interest in the award, there's more interest in the convention, there's more interest in the genre.
Now, if you look at the very specific literal definition of slate,
Yes.
because that word gets thrown around a lot. It's the idea of a slate. The slate is a list of options, a list of choices.
Yes.
And that's basically what the ballot is. The ballot is a slate of nominees.
Absolutely.
And John Scalzi has his list of recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Davidson has a list of recommendations. You guys have a list of recommendations. How is it that the idea of a list of recommended titles, how did that become a slate in a negative, pejorative way, do you think?
I think that there is a very small but very loud and quite influential clique that had thought that they had a lock on quietly arranging things in the background. If you take a look at the history of nominations and the history of finalists for, say, the 5 to 10 years leading up to probably Sad Puppies 2 would be the first real sign of this changing.
Right.
You will find that there are particular names that come up again and again and again. I think that the faction behind those names and their continuous reappearance, when by an objective assessment, they are not the best of the best to that extent. Mm-hmm. Certainly they are deserving of maybe 1 or 2 of those years.
Sure.
But there are others who are equally or possibly more deserving, who have been crowded out by this particular faction. And it was inevitable that there would be some kind of reaction against that faction. And that faction, I think, has not taken terribly well to having their control challenged.
Now, some people would argue that not necessarily upsetting the status quo, but the process that you guys have engaged in, the campaign, as it were, all of that with Sad Puppies, has basically been to foment not necessarily controversy, but basically inciting rebellion among the ranks. I mean, some people have criticized you as being the ones who are the troublemakers and the ones who are causing all of this to be as ugly as it is. And really, when I'm seeing some of these things, hearing what you're saying about just increasing participation, and yes, a lot of the blowback in the online discussion, especially last year, got very negative and very angry. And I wonder how much of that has affected membership participation. How much do you think people would actually want to participate in the Hugos, in the voting process, the nominating process, knowing that the last couple of years you're either on one side or the other? Whether you intend to be grouped into one camp or another camp, that's what's going to end up happening. Are you making any efforts to avoid that kind of thing from
I
happening?
I have certainly been doing what I can to avoid and prevent that. The list that I put together was open to absolutely anybody who wished to have any participation, and a number of people who would identify themselves as belonging to the other side
Sure.
were in fact active participants. And there were a lot of very good, very active discussions going on about how good the works that people were talking about were. And that was the whole goal. I made it as open and as clear and as honest as I could do it. I did not at any point inject my own preferences into the list. It was simply, a collated list of, hey, these works are the most popular of the ones that the people who participated suggested. And I really don't see that is much different from the Locus Online list of things that they think are the best,
right.
or John Scalzi's list of things that he thinks are the best.
Now, just to clarify, because I want to make sure that people understand this, these lists that are being collected and collated and disseminated, whether it's Scalzi or Locus or Sad Puppies or Rabid Puppies or any of those things, those lists are simply suggestions. Right?
Correct.
This is not one of these things that says, all right, here are your marching orders, go nominate these titles. You don't have, really, how, whether it's one side or the other, how do you have any way of making people nominate a certain way or another? You really don't.
I don't. And all along I have said, read them, watch them, look at them, make your own decision.
And yet last year we had 5 no awards, membership voting almost in lockstep to block out all of these nominations, and tying the number of no awards in 1 year that we've had in the history of the Hugos. Given that things have been rather less contentious this year, at least on the surface what we've seen, do you anticipate another Hugo year like last year?
I certainly hope that will not happen. I very much fear that if it does, it will be the death knell of the Hugos, and I don't want to see that happen.
Right. What do you see going into the business meetings with the rules changes and the nominees?
Okay.
What kind of impact do you think that's going to have on efforts to put together recommendation lists?
I don't see those rules changes affecting efforts to put together recommendations lists. I do see that if some of those rule changes go through, particularly the ones that are aimed at excluding slates, unquote,
Right.
I think if those go through, a number of people will actually turn their focus away from the Hugos, will decide that the Hugos are dead, the Hugos are no longer for me, and look to somewhere else that is more willing to accept other people's input.
Something like the Dragon Awards that have just been put together as
Yes,
part of DragonCon.
I do not think it is a coincidence that the Dragon Awards have started this year after last year's award, and not just the no awards either. The pre-award reception that Bane's publisher Tony Weisskopf walked out of in disgust.
Right. Heard about that.
The wooden asterisks,
Yes.
to be polite.
Right. So let's game this out a little bit. The Hugo Awards are tonight,
Yes.
and let's say it all goes well. Every category gets a winner. Is that a win for Sad Puppies? Is that a win for the Hugos? Is that a win for any particular group, or is it just now we're back to normal and we can move forward?
I think it would I think it is potentially a win. A lot will depend on whether or not there is any actual nastiness going on as part of the ceremony. One of the things that caused a great deal of anger last year was encouraging people to cheer the no awards,
right,
but not permitting anyone to boo. And that, rightly or wrongly, was seen as shutting down disagreement.
Exactly. I had a couple of friends of mine had been watching the feed and was looking at it and saying, these people are just mean. I'm not going to watch this anymore. And who knows how many people were of that same mindset that went away after seeing some of that behavior.
And people who see that sort of thing and think, wow, what horrible people. What chances what likelihood is there of those people saying, well, yeah, I want to be part of this award where people are really mean.
Right. Yeah, why would I even want to be a part of that?
And I'm trying to counter that to a large extent, by showing that, no, just because we're calling ourselves sad puppies, which is a bit of a joke,
sure,
and always has been, doesn't mean that we want to go and whittle on the Hugos, to take a phrase.
Sure.
It's just a bit of a fun phrase, a bit of a joke, and the Hugos have a massive tradition of jokes.
Now, the number of participants in the Sad Puppies list last year versus this year, did you see an increase in the number of people that were sitting there banning about titles and suggestions going into it?
I wasn't actually running it last year,
right,
but I do think there was an increase in people who were interested.
Okay. All right. Well, the Hugo Awards tonight, we will find out for sure. Kate Paulk, organizer, co-chair, I guess you could say, of the Sad Puppies 4 campaign. Hopefully, at some point, everybody will just be fans that nominate their titles, and we won't have to go through all of this controversy every year. So
agreed. We are all fans. That's the important part.
All right. Thank you very much for your time today. And for more coverage of the 74th Annual Worldcon, be sure to keep it here on Sci-Fi For Me TV.